So I have another video in my 12 Days of Palette series, which is loosely based on the 12 Days of Christmas, and I've been trying to use the palettes that I picked up in the flurry of releases at the end of last year. So I have a whole playlist if you'd like to kind of peruse all of those videos, but the basic format is I will do up-close swatches from a top-down perspective, and then I will do a demo, and then I will give you my final thoughts and let you know what I think. So I did push this palette towards the front of the line. I think I'm on like video 7 or so now, because I know a lot of people got this palette in their Beautylish Lucky Bags last month, and I just wanted to give you some ideas for how you might use this palette if you maybe are a little bit uncomfortable with a more colorful palette, or maybe you didn't get this in your lucky bag and you've just always been curious about it. Hopefully this video will address some of those questions. And in addition to talking about this palette, I do some swatch comparisons with the NARS palette, which I know is kind of a hot ticket item right now. And I also go in depth about all of the different formulations in this palette. So I will have timestamps down below if you'd like to jump to a particular portion. But with all that being said, let's get into the swatches. All right, so let's get into some swatches. So this is the outer packaging for the Roxa palette. You have a net weight of 17.15 grams. And 24-month shelf life, and it is made in Italy. So I thought what I would do is, because I like to swatch Natasha Denona palettes by finish, is I would actually remove the pans from the palette because they are easily removable, and then swatch them that way. So I'll line all of them up. And just to quickly show you how I do that before I speed through everything. So I have this, I think it's actually a scrapbooking tool, but you can just push this through the hole in the back and very carefully remove each shade. And I did already mark what each shade is and the formulation and everything on the back. So I don't have to worry about any of the shades getting mixed up here. I did upload, I think, a little reel on, I want to say Instagram and TikTok. I don't always cross-post everything across all platforms, but I did do this to all of the existing Natasha Denona palettes that I have that are magnetic. So if you ever wanted to kind of compare one palette to another without the kind of distraction of this background skewing things a little bit, then you can check that out. I do plan to kind of keep up with that. It may not be updated every time a new palette is released, but I would like to make that available as a resource. And I have already swatched a couple of these shades. So this is not kind of a brand new palette. So let me quickly put these in order according to finish. I think sometimes it's just helpful to see things broken down this way as well. So I think that's roughly light to dark. It kind of goes from cool to warm here, so it's a little bit of a different transition. And this is also, I think, a silky matte. Okay, so that's another way to look at the palette. So we have 8 silky mattes, so over half the palette is matte. And then we have 1 metallic, 1 crystal, 1 sparkling wet effect, and the remaining 4 shades are sparkling foiled. So I'm going to swatch these by finish. I believe this is the first time we've seen this silky matte formula in a Natasha Denona palette. She recently came out with the Mini Eye Sculpt palette, and the 2 new shades here are both silky mattes, but then we have 3 creamy mattes. Those are repeat shades. So just for kind of a reference for the formula, because these are all silky matte, I thought I would just go ahead and swatch those so maybe you can see the difference. So as the name would suggest, I think the silky formula is just, it's silkier. It's not, it's a little bit thinner. It doesn't have quite the same level of grip that the creamy matte formula has. The creamy mattes are a little bit thicker, I would say. Okay, so I think I'll do these 4 at a time. So the first one here is the shade Phoebe. I don't think I've ever swatched individual shades like this. And then we have Sweet Pea. Next up is Velour. And then finally, Orchid. It's very hard to do this one-handed. Okay, there we go. So those are the first 4 silky mattes from this palette. Interesting, that 4th one didn't pick up quite the same as the others. I think purples are notoriously difficult to formulate. So let me read you the shade descriptions for the first 4. So the first one, Phoebe, is a silky matte, light lilac. Sweet Pea is a silky matte, light medium, warm lilac. Velour is a silky matte, medium lilac. Lilacs are my mom's favorite flowers. I'm laughing a little bit here. And the shade Orchid is a silky matte, medium purple. So those are the first 4. I feel like in the US, so going into the shade Heather, we don't describe things as being a lilac shade very often. Cerise, it's kind of a cherry shade. And then we have Jacaranda. Is it Jacaranda or Acaranda? Yacaranda? I just think of Encanto. And then Eclipse. So those are the 4 slightly deeper shades. And you can see there's some fallout there. So I am filming this before I do the demo. So those are the remaining 4 matte shades. So sometimes when you are building enough pigment on a finger to do a swatch, you just end up picking a lot more up from the pan than you would when you're doing an eye look. Okay, so Heather was this shade right here. That is a silky matte, medium dusty coral rose. Cerise is a silky matte, medium dark muted fuchsia. This one, Jacaranda, is a silky matte, medium dark violet, and Eclipse is a silky matte, deep purple. All right, so those are all the mattes you get in this palette, roughly laid out from lightest to deepest. And yeah, until you get into the deeper shades, you're not getting like a lot of true purples. Maybe it's just the nature of purple as a shade that it tends to go a little bit pinker. But yeah, those are all the mattes. Okay, so next up we have 3 shades that I'm going to group together just because there's only one of each shade. So we have Regal is a metallic shade. This is a metallic vintage rose. And this is one of, I think, Natasha Denona's oldest formulations. It was this and her creamy matte formula way back in the green, brown, and blue purple palette days. So that is Regal. Next up we have Dixie, which for the life of me, I can't figure out why she decided to name this shade Dixie. But this is a crystal sparkling warm pink with blue and purple specks. And crystal shades have also been kind of a part of her lineup in some form or fashion. So there you can see the difference between a metallic and a crystal. And then Flutter is a sparkling wet effect. So this is a sparkling wet effect lilac pink. This is one of her newer formulations. I'm not sure if it came out with the Yucca palette at first. I'd have to check my my spreadsheet of all the Natasha Denona shades. Okay, so those are the 3 remaining kind of sparkly shades that aren't sparkling foiled. And we do have 4 sparkling foiled. So we have, this one is Stargirl. It's a sparkling foiled duochrome pink with a bronze champagne shift. So that is Stargirl. Next we have Brink, is a sparkling foiled pink. And again, this formula came out around the same time as the sparkling wet effect. And then we have Bolt, is a sparkling foiled graphic designed violet and silver. So I think I've said in other videos that I'm not a huge fan of this kind of swirled pattern because you aren't quite sure what you're going to get on the eyelids just from looking at the pan, but it is a very pretty shade. And then finally we have Concord, which is a sparkling foiled medium violet. So those are the 4 sparkling foiled. And sometimes with these shades, like, I don't know that there's a clear formula distinction between like the crystal and the sparkling wet effect. I'm sure there's a reason why they're called different things, but those are all kind of the shiny metallic shades. Let me zoom out just a tad. And then just to give you a closer look, the first one is the metallic, and then we have the crystal shade, sparkling wet effect, and the sparkling foiled. Okay, so the last thing I want to do here for this swatch portion is to compare some of these shades to the NARS Afterglow Tempting palette, for which I've already filmed a video like this. And I explicitly said in that video that if you were buying this for that purple matte shade, I don't know if it would really be the best investment for you. So this one has 3 glitter shades, which are very similar to some of the Urban Decay Moondust shades. I have a little short up on YouTube comparing those explicitly. And then we also have 3 metallics, which I guess I can go ahead and compare. So I think it's this one, and this one are the 3 metallics in this palette. I don't think this metallic shade in the Natasha Denona is going to be necessarily that similar, but you probably have more metallics than you really know what to do with at this point if you enjoy eyeshadow palettes. So then we have 3 mattes. I'll come back to the glitters in a second. So these are the 3 mattes. And I do still have some kind of sparkle on my arm. It's difficult to remove with just a damp makeup eraser. Visually, I think this shade looks the closest. That is the shade Velour. So just putting that side by side there. And this is maybe the shade that didn't swatch as well. It is, I think, a bit lighter. Feels maybe a little bit chalkier as well. These are all a bit warmer. Let's go ahead and swatch this one. That's a bit deeper. So those are some of the closest, I think, Natasha Denona Roxa shades compared to that particular shade. They are different. Whether it's enough of a difference to justify the purchase of another palette to you is kind of an open question. So let me swatch. This NARS palette has a few more, I don't know, just traditional brown mattes. I want to swatch this one in particular, I think. So there are some warmer shades in the Roxa, but they're not going to be the same tone. So they're leaning more into this kind of reddish cherry coral space than the NARS does. So that just might be a matter of preference. And then I also wanted to compare the crystal shade, more for formulation reasons than shade. So this is the crystal shade in the Natasha Denona, which is really pretty. And then these are the 3 glitter shades in the NARS. So yeah, not that similar shade-wise, but I think as far as like glitter shadows go, they kind of have a similar look to them, just from a formulation perspective. So I think that's going to do it. So like I said when I was reviewing this palette, if you really just want a purple palette, if this shade is the reason why you're picking up the NARS palette, and if you do already have some of those Urban Decay Moondust shades, then I don't know that this NARS palette is necessarily the best way to go. You know, sometimes it's just a matter of having the whole package, and I fully understand that. So obviously I felt compelled to purchase both the NARS and the Roxa palette, so I don't think they're straight on dupes or anything. I'm just trying to help you navigate all these different palettes if you are looking to kind of maintain a more minimal collection. And the beauty of these Natasha Denona palettes as well is that you could pop out any of her palettes and combine them to kind of create your perfect combination of shades. So if you want just a pop of purple and then a lot more neutrals, you could create your perfect palette. So I think there is a lot of value in that, in addition to just having really good formulations and color stories by themselves. All right, so that is everything popped back into this palette. Like I showed you, I did write on the back what the shade, formula, and palette were on the back of these, so I would recommend doing that. You can just do that with a regular kind of thin Sharpie, and if you ever did decide to remove it for some reason or redo it, you can just take like a little bit of rubbing alcohol and wipe it off, and it'll be kind of as good as new. So that is it for the swatch portion. Let's head into the demo. All right, so let's get into the demo portion. So I'm finally going to remove the mirror cover. I get my nail underneath there. So unfortunately, mine isn't coming off very well. It's coming off in like strips. Did anyone else have this issue? It's like I'm able to take off the top layer, but there's still a film underneath. All right, I think I finally got a corner where it came off, but yeah, that was annoying. I don't know that I've ever experienced that before. So I already primed and set my lids with the Fenty eye primer and the Charlotte Tilbury powder. So I'm going to go in here to the shade Phoebe on my Sigma Large Fluff E50. And even though I set my lids, I just like kind of going over with a base layer. And then once that is on, I'm just gonna start building it up. So I'm gonna go in with the shade Sweet Pea, which is a light pink, and take that into the crease. Then I think next, I'm gonna take the Acaranda shade. I kept mispronouncing it when I was watching. Started editing back a little bit of the swatch footage earlier today. So kind of following the same shape that I normally do. All right, and then I'm gonna take my crease brush again. This is the Classic Crease from Sonia G, and go into Velour. And just kind of go over everything I just did to blend. I kind of want this to be sort of unabashedly purple. All right, so I think I'm gonna leave that there, and then I'm gonna take a Rephr 28 and go into the shade Concord, which I believe is a sparkling foiled. So I think looking at it, I do want to build up a little bit on the lower lash line. I'm gonna go into that shade Velour. I did do my base first. I see a little bit of fallout. Nothing that I can't handle, but... and then I'm going to take some of that Concord shade as well. Just to add a little bit underneath. Okay, so to amp things up a little bit, I'm going to use the Lisa Eldridge Skin and Makeup Enhancing Mist. So you can use any kind of makeup mist that you have. Obviously, it doesn't have to be that one. And going back into Concord, yeah, that will definitely boost the payoff. I think I want to try the shade Flutter, which is this one up here. I'm going to start off with the same brush. So quite pretty. It doesn't have maybe the same level of opacity to it, but it definitely gives you that kind of sparkle to it. I want to see what happens if I take the shade Bolt, which is the one in the middle. I guess I'll use my finger so I get kind of an even distribution, and this is definitely going to add a little bit more of a blue element to the look. I think that's good though. I think having all of those layered kind of brings it together. And just for fun, let's take the shade Stargirl, which is that one right next to it. And I just want to pop a little of this in the inner corner. It's kind of blending with that pink a bit, I think. All right, so I just took a clean 28. Yeah, for some reason it's looking a lot more pink than I thought it would. So I think I'm gonna leave it there. It's the kind of thing where I think I could just kind of keep going indefinitely. But I'm going to hop off camera to do my liner and mascara, and then I'll be back to give you my final thoughts. So the rest of the face is done. I used my Victoria Beckham liner in Fig to add a little bit more of a purple kick to the eyes. Then I used my Clinique bottom lash and my Tarte Lights Camera Splashes, which is in a purple too, but is black. And then I wanted to go for a more pink cheek, so I used the MAC Glow Play Blush in Totally Synced. And for lips, I don't have a lot of like true kind of lilac pink shades in my collection. I tried the Chantecaille Lip Chic that I got in my Lucky Bag, but I ended up taking that off and I just applied some of this Fenty gloss in Confetti. I don't know if this is a permanent shade or not. I just had it as part of a set. So that is everything on my face. I did also use like the Natasha Denona concealer. Still not my favorite concealer, but not really the point of this video. So everything I'm wearing, I'll link down below if I can. But yeah, let's talk about this palette. So obviously it is a more colorful palette. It may not be for everyone. And this isn't a look that I'll probably recreate anytime soon, and I probably won't grab this palette very often, but I am a collector of Natasha Denona shadows, and I do like how all of these MIDI palettes are kind of interchangeable. So if you just wanted to pull a couple shades from this palette, you could combine it with some other neutral palettes to create a more neutral look with just maybe a little bit of a pop. So unless you really like purple or you want to play around and create your own perfect palette, I don't think this is a palette I would necessarily recommend purchasing. I think it has a lot of nice shades in it and nice formulas. So I do like it, and I think it's a really pretty look. I just don't want to kind of come off as a Natasha Denona evangelist where I'm telling you to buy absolutely everything she releases. I didn't pick up any of her cream blushes, and I don't really intend to because they don't really speak to me. So I hope this video was helpful if you did get it in your Beautylish lucky bag and you were looking for just some ideas of how to use it, or if you had already purchased it when it came out last year and it's just been kind of collecting dust. Maybe it would be worth pulling out just to create a fun look like this one. And I do, I think, still stand by what I said in my NARS video, which is, I think if you were just going for that one purple shade in this palette, I think your craving for something purple will be better satisfied by this palette, obviously. And I showed you in a reel how the glitter shades in this are very similar to some of the permanent Urban Decay Moondust shades. So that's gonna do it. I hope you guys are doing well and staying safe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.